So let's get into the news here for the week. And the first bit of news is that Harley Quinn is getting her own adult animated series. Now, this is not to be confused with only found on Pornhub or anything like that. It is, more like think Adult Swim.
Pretty sure Pornhub already has Harley Quinn adult content.
But that's not officially stuff.
Yeah, I'm guessing, but I still remember the Batman porn parody from a few years ago, which was so epically good in the costuming, and the person who played the Joker actually had a mustache and did his face white over the mustache like Cesar Romero did on the Batman of the Batman series from 1966, the Adam West Burt Ward series. Like, it was phenomenal. And if you had the DVD, you could actually play the whole thing clean, so you didn't have to see the adult parts. But I downloaded it and watched it with friends over at their house, and like most things of pornographies, I couldn't really take it. It really freaks me out, man. Like, I'm not a modern day porn watcher. I just can't do it.
So I believe it is the one that you're referring to is one that is done by Axel Braun. These are ones that actually make mainstream news, and he does have 215 credits as a director on IMDb. But because they get so accurate with the representation, you even go back to they did X-Men, but it's always X-Men Triple X or Iron Man Triple X, an Axel Braun parody, and stuff like that. But they always, the costumes are always spot on for these type of characters. It's just you then have, what's this? Now Wolverine and Lady Deathstrike are gonna have sex and stuff like that.
Yeah, like I said, I know that I have too tender a constitution to watch that stuff. I was just super impressed because it was at the time it was like the big breakout parody adult film, and because they put such an effort into it, and it makes sense that he continues on and keeps doing more stuff like that. I just don't know if anything's going to equal the impact. Oh God, none of this sounds right. Anyway, so Harley Quinn is getting an animated series. Now, you say adult animated series, so you mean that it's not going to be on Disney XD, it's not going to be on Cartoon Network, or if anything, it would be on Adult Swim.
Yeah,
kind of thing. So or is it going to be like the Stripperella series that Pam Anderson and Stan Lee did together? Or Stripperella? Is that what it was?
Yeah, Stripperella. But so this is coming from Deadline, and this is going to go directly to Warner Brothers' upcoming the DC branded direct-to-consumer digital platform. They ordered 26 episodes of a half-hour adult animated action comedy series from the executive producers of Powerless, Justin Halpern and Patrick Schumacher, and Dean Lorry via Warner Brothers Animation. The other cool part with this is so I'm trying not to look too deep into this, but they are getting they're wanting to get Margot Robbie to do the voice and all that.
Catch her in a contract while you can, because Margot Robbie is definitely blowing up right now. She is a hot commodity in Hollywood, and deservedly so. I even with the naysayers of Suicide Squad and everything, she was herself quite good in it. In a part, was it necessarily Harley Quinn as some of us purists might see the character? Not necessarily, but it was still a very good portrayal of an interesting character up on the screen, in a not necessarily as interesting movie. But yeah, and you look at the things like she's playing Tanya Harding in that film coming up pretty soon. She was in the Wolves of Wall Street, which is, I think, where people first really recognize her from. If you can get her to do the voice for this, that would be amazing.
And the other part with this, because every streaming service has a big hurdle for me, and that is they have to have enough stuff that I can't get where I'm currently at with Hulu, Netflix, Amazon Prime, WWE Network. to justify adding to YouTube Red, if I didn't mention that one, to add to this. This is starting to do that. I mean, they already have, this is the same platform that's going to have Young Justice Season 3. I forget what they have the subtitle for it. And then they're going to have the live action Titans from Greg Berlanti, Akiva Goldsman, Jeff Johns, Sarah Schechter, and all that. So this is where they're starting to get enough of the stuff here that it's like, all right, I might, have to check it out.
Now, there's a couple caveats for me. One is that I already am not watching the CW shows, which are available to me for free. So Berlantiverse extending into, even if it's not considered the Berlantiverse, but the same people doing those shows, doing a show on this network, even though it's the Titans, and Dick Grayson, as I've said many times, is one of my 2 favorite comic book characters of all time. I don't know if that's compelling. DC's animated stuff for me the last several years has not been something that warranted much of my attention. As a matter of fact, I would say that the last Harley Quinn animated film that came out just recently was considered kind of an adult take on Harley Quinn, considering the fact that it's not exactly against his consent, but did take advantage of a tied up Nightwing on her bed in a hookup that never seen in the comics. And just seems to be the tone that they've taken with these movies. Hey, I want to be Batgirl. Oh, really? You want to fight crime? No, really, I want to bone down with Batman. That's my motivations as a female character in this universe. So, yeah, I'm not jumping them down. And while Young Justice seemed like a cool show, I didn't really keep up with it. It's one of those things that I probably would like to get back to and watch. At the time that it was on the CW, I didn't have the drive to watch a Saturday morning cartoon at that point. But seeing the first 2 seasons available on Netflix every once in a while, I think, oh yeah, I should check this out. One of my best friends is really into the show, and so I'm excited for him that at least that it's coming back. And it looks good. But it is now these are 3 different universes of DC characters, and that's all we're hearing so far about the WB streaming service or the DC streaming service is this kind of stuff. I think that there are certainly fans that I could see could be compelled to join up for those examples alone. But the non-DC superhero fans, like, what is going to compel them to want to join this service and then stay with this service?
I think part of it might be some of the back catalog stuff. So what I like, stuff that I could easily see them doing is, Batman the Animated Series, Justice League, Young Justice, Justice League Unlimited, all this stuff, even some of the newer stuff, like they do similar to like Hulu, where they have for Teen Titans Go and Justice League Action, they do up to so they have everything behind the current season for Teen Titans Go and Justice League Action on this thing. That could be enough to get a lot of people going there, especially for parents who have kids who love seeing these shows and just want to watch them all the time, but they're wanting to cut the cord, or it's a time when Teen Titans Go isn't on Cartoon Network, and those rare 3 hours in a week,
the 15 minutes of the month. And again, just because it's not for me doesn't mean it's not for somebody. I have to look at it from the point of view of, but is it going to gather a wide enough audience? That when we're hearing about the Disney streaming service, and you see what Disney is bringing to the table with a Star Wars show, with a new live action Marvel superhero show, and the other things, Pixar stuff, that seems like it hits such a wide spread that it's going to compel a lot of people to sign up for it. because they own too many goddamn properties. And if you follow it even further, it seems like, oh yeah, remember how in the 80s we had, you don't, but we had Young Indiana Jones? We could have a new Indiana Jones TV series because Harrison Ford's not going to make many more of those pictures. And after number 4, he probably shouldn't. That's just realistic.
Yeah.
So I do have to say that when you're looking at what it takes to break into this with the services that we've seen come and go so quickly in some cases, and you see services that are still struggling, that shouldn't be struggling that bad, but are still struggling to make the impact of, like, how do we compete with Netflix? Amazon losing the star of what is essentially probably their most talked about show in Transparent. It's been announced that Jeffrey Tambor is leaving the show because of the controversy and stuff right now. If Amazon is having problems still, and they've been in this game for a while, and it comes as part of your Prime membership, which everybody should have anyways, if Hulu is still struggling to break free from, oh, it's just where you watch TV if you don't have TV service, but it's not bringing us anything new, then yeah, it's a question of, can these other people do something that's also going to be compelling and make that happen? Honestly, did I say this before? I was talking to a friend at work about the new Blade Runner movie, and he's like, "Did you go see the new Blade Runner movie?" I'm like, "I don't give a shit about the first Blade Runner movie. Second of all, the new Blade Runner movie is a fucking 3-hour film. Like, I am 46 years old. I can sit and pee for 3 hours straight. I can't not pee for 3 hours straight. I do not have that capability anymore in my life."
But yeah. So I honestly wonder, because of the fact that, if we see that Hulu and Amazon and Netflix are struggling, and they have licenses for a whole bunch of TV shows and content out there that they're not making, then what does DC have to do, or Warner Brothers have to do with just DC? Now, I see this going along the ways of the of like Comic-Con HQ would do, or even HBO, Showtime, where they will see a lot of their subscriptions come from Amazon as a part of, like, the Amazon channels that they have.
Yeah, it becomes an Amazon channel. I was just thinking the same thing.
Or it becomes, hopefully it. Actually, I'd be torn on it. It could also go the other way of Comic-Con HQ, and where it's like, oh, we're gonna do it for free on the Roku, and so you download the app, and it's, all the stuff is there.
Well, and see, that's the difference of being a channel versus being just making content for Amazon or making content for Netflix, because then you can be in multiple places, and you can be kind of like, I'm TBS, and I'm on Comcast, but I'm also on DirecTV, and I'm also on Dish Network. So I'm available to more viewers that way, and I'm not tied down to any one specific service, which is potentially great. It means that if Amazon suddenly goes away, but you can still make your content available through wherever else, then you're not screwed. But if you're making a show strictly for Hulu, and then Hulu just bellies up tomorrow, it's like, well, we don't lose that show by doing this. But it is still it's the same thing as cable at that point. It gets to be that if Amazon has channels, then you start to pay for all the extra stuff like you would pay for it on TV and through your Comcast subscription or through your DirecTV subscription. And it's, at least you get to pick and choose your channels that way. But while the cost starts to offset, and you wind up spending just as much as you were before as a cord cutter to not have that one subscription. So do you chase the channels around? The whole thing that sets the difference is the on-demand portion of it. It's when I sign up for Netflix, I get access to all the things that Netflix has in their own box, at any point in time. So if I only subscribe to Netflix for 3 months out of the year, but in those 3 months, it's like I can watch all of Stranger Things and I can watch all of Orange is the New Black or whatever else. That seems great. One of the things that pulls me back from a Hulu thing is like I will probably sign up for the 30-day free trial for Hulu at the end of the Runaways season. So I can watch them all at once, because I don't know that they're releasing all the episodes at the same time like what Netflix does.
No, so actually, as a quick little side note, but I saw an article that said actually how, and it was from comicbook.com going, how can you watch the Runaways if you're in Canada? So this goes for, half of the Galactic Network family. And it is airing on I forgot the name of the channel up there, but it's the same channel that Supergirl airs on up there. So it is going to be, they're doing the first week, and this might just be on there. I don't know if it's on both them and Hulu or what, but they're doing the first 2 episodes released, for the premiere, and then 1 episode each and every week for Runaways. So that should help out a little bit.
Meanwhile, Harley Quinn with an animated series, that's cool.
Yeah,
I guess. Yeah, that's potentially.
One of the things I would like to see is, like, as a consultant or someone, would probably be Amanda Conner and Jimmy Palmiotti, because one of the things I would love to see is the interaction that Harley has, especially in the comics right now, with Poison Ivy and with actually, because if they said it in Coney Island like she is right now, her other boyfriend or her boyfriend that was in the witness protection program and all that stuff, and that love triangle, or actually no, triangle is not the right word, love right angle, because Ivy and I think his name's Malcolm or something like that, they don't hate each other, but they're not in love with each other. They're in love with Harley and all that. So I call it a love right angle.
Yeah, everybody loves Harley. And it does seem like they would have a lot to draw from what Jimmy and Amanda have been doing with the book. Although, as I understand it, I think they're leaving the title coming up, or maybe already have. So, yeah. And Jimmy's made statements before that even if they do take from what they've done in the comics, they're not getting the earnings from it that they do from their own creator-owned stuff. And so he said, it makes more sense for me to focus on work where I can get the long-term benefits than the company that I work for getting it, which is not saying that he's giving up on company work, but when he has the potential of doing a Painkiller Jane stuff or something along those lines, then it makes more sense for him to focus on those things.
Yeah. So I got a question for you, Corey. As a comic book guy, or lifelong comic book fan, when a publisher announces that they've canceled a book, does it necessarily mean that it's canceled?
What's more frustrating is when a publisher doesn't cancel a book and just keeps stretching the release date over and over and over again. So you as a retailer have invested in this book. You're charged in such a weird state for the comics that you order as a comic book retailer, because you have to figure out what the shipping's going to be when the stuff is supposed to come, and then if it doesn't show up, you're missing titles for that week. You have things that you're counting on to make sales to your customers, and then that stuff doesn't come in, and your customer's like, well, what happened to blah, 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 and I came in to get that. Well, it hasn't shown up yet. Well, when's it showing up? I unfortunately don't know, because such and such company won't tell me. They said it was coming out this date, and then they said it was coming out this date, and now it's been pushed back to February answer and Ape Knot, and I don't know. I have no clue. So well, here, I'd rather they cancel a book than just keep this illusion alive.
Let me ask you this, because I'm saying this as a way to segue into our next story. because you might have seen in the news that Marvel has canceled Powers #9 and United States of Murder Inc. Annual #1. Now, what do those books have in common?
They are both notoriously late already.
But why are they usually notoriously late already?
Because the creators behind them are liars. They are filthy, filthy liars. And that is the common thread, is that they are both books created by Brian Michael Bendis and partners.
Yes.
For Marvel's once existing Icon line, which I don't believe exists anymore and has pretty much just been a farce for the last several years anyways, because they created it to appease Bendis and Mark Miller. And when Mark Miller stopped working at Marvel, his stuff stopped coming out at Icon. And now that Bendis is leaving Marvel, this stuff isn't coming out anymore either.
Well, the last one that I knew of that was actually at Marvel, in the Icon line, was it Empress? I think it was the Scott Snyder book that he was doing. Or no. Scott Snyder, the Stuart Immonen book.
Empress was Mark Miller and Stuart Immonen.
Yeah.
Kabuki was coming out at Icon for a brief period of time, but Kabuki was a creator-owned book before Men of Wrath miniseries by Jason Aaron. But most of the stuff has had Brian Michael Bendis stamped on it.
Yeah. So the big news, because as we said last week, he has signed a deal with DC. He has signed a multi-year, multifaceted, exclusive deal with DC in 2018. Starting in 2018. So Marvel has canceled these two books. Now Bendis tweeted, if a book is pulled, or I guess directed towards the media, if a book is pulled from the publisher by the author for a new publisher, it is not canceled so much as it is switching publishers. Not as sexy a clickbait headline, but whatever. Huge Jinxworld news coming very soon.
But that's exactly my point, though, is that these books have been solicited. I can't recall how long ago, and have been on a to use a gentle, kind version of the term, sporadic schedule since they came out, since the beginning of them. And all of Bendis's projects over there have. Most of his stuff has never been finished. It's like waiting for Kevin Smith to finish his Daredevil Bullseye story that he was doing for the Ultimate Universe at one point. It just... So you're saying now you're going to get these done? Because that's the thing, is I've already given up hope, and not like I was the biggest fan of either of these properties, but there are certainly things that were coming out. Scarlet was one that I really liked the first issue of by Bendis. I don't remember if it was Alex Maleev, but it was very good. And that first issue came out, and then there was nothing to follow it up. It was supposed to be an ongoing series, or at least a mini-series. No, it turned into a one-shot because they never went to the next one. And that, I don't know if that's the culture of Marvel or if that's the culture of Bendis. Yeah. But it's hard not to see that Marvel has definitely allowed that to happen. And maybe there's different expectations going over to DC. I don't know. But you kind of already burned me once. And so I'm not jumping up and down for these properties because it's until I see that the stuff actually is coming out. It's the same thing I've said about some of the things like the Gambit movie. It's vaporware. It's vaporware until we see something. Because all you're doing right now is talking out your ass, and I am sick of chewing on your farts.
Yeah, try to blow smoke up bars.
And you telling me it's roast beast. You can't cancel a book if it's being taken to another publisher. Yeah, but you can't publish a book if you didn't fucking write it. Schrodinger's asshole. I just like.
So the other side of this, though, is because that's sort of the news with that is he's moving his Jinxworld stuff to another publisher. In a similar way to like he could be taking over to DC since he has that deal. Similar to how Kurt Busiek brought Astro City from Image Comics to Wildstorm and then to Vertigo. So I mean, that's
Astro City started out as part of the Homage line which was at Wildstorm. It was a imprint that he did, and I want to say Terry Moore was publishing Strangers in Paradise through that for a while. He pulled it from Abstract over to Homage and was doing it in color, and then realized that was not the right move, and then moved it back to Abstract Studios again. There was probably another Homage series that I cannot recall right now, but Busick and Brent Anderson, and of course the cover artist Alex Ross, they were 100% dedicated to doing Astro City. Now, there's certainly been times where it's lapsed, usually because of Busick's had several bouts of really bad health problems.
Yeah.
But for the most part, this book has continued to truck on, and they finish a storyline, and if they need to give themselves a break, they give themselves a break. But you never feel like you're not going to get a conclusion from Astro City. And when Wildstorm got sold to DC, it was kind of one of those things of like, is this a property that DC gets? Because it's Busick's own ownership, or it's the trio's ownership. And they decided, yeah, we'll publish it at DC. And DC is kind enough to give it a home, which is great, because it would be a terrible world if Astro City wasn't in it. It is a lovely and brilliant book. I also say that as a person who's kind of friends with Brent Anderson. But I was already a fan of the book before I met Brent. I worry if Bendis feels like he's going to go over to DC and do the same things he was allowed to do at Marvel. And at Marvel, he was kind of the top guy. He was the top writer. He was one of their primary engineers, he got to work on, like, oh, I think I'd like to write Spider-Man for a good long time. Sure. Now I'd like to write X-Men. Okay, let's see how you can fuck that up. Of course, I'm going to do a half dozen Avengers books. Yeah, fuck it. They're tanked. Do what you need to do. That's all well and good. When you're the top, you can get away with stuff, and you can say, oh, we should do something so I can do my own stuff, my creator-owned stuff. And you guys used to do that with Eclipse, but you don't have Eclipse anymore. Oh, we'll create a new line for you and Mark, because you guys have done so well for us. And then they just didn't give a shit. That's really how it felt. Mark, at least his stuff eventually came out by the time he had sold the rights to it being a movie, and you were seeing the film was about to come out. He's like, wow, we should probably finish this shit up so that we have the ability to sell a trade at the same time the people are setting line the movie tickets going, what the fuck is Kick-Ass? Why am I here? Oh, there's a comic based on this? Sure, I'll look at that. All that aside, I hope that editorial is going to be better about keeping these people in line. If you're getting people from this other company, don't let their bad habits come with them. There has to be something in place to say, and DC's worked really hard to make sure that their stuff is coming out on time. They don't always make all their deadlines, but they've made huge strides towards that. And sometimes, like a Marvel event, it loses something when they have to put multiple artists on a book, and you're looking for consistency of art as opposed to, no, I need this out in 4 weeks. It's like, give it 6 weeks so I can at least have in my trade collection, the whole story looks right, and I don't have to switch from here's Superman looking hyper realistic in one panel, and then the next panel he looks like he's straight out of a fucking Gumby cartoon. I want the book to look good.
Mm-hmm.
What's the final project?
Yeah. So the other bit of Bendis news is something that we hit on last week with the with our ElseWords about Bendis going to DC. Was, and this is what someone asked him on his Tumblr. Father Jerusalem asked, so with you jumping over to DC, what's going to happen to Jessica or Miles and Jessica? I'm really worried right now because I like Miles a lot, and Jessica is, in my opinion, the best new character created in comics in the past 25 years. And Bendis' response is actually pretty great here. He says, most of my questions is a version of this lovely question. Let me answer this with a big fear not. Though I will relinquish control next month, I have been assured by my friends at Marvel that Miles, Riri, Jessica and all these satellite characters around them will continue in fine Marvel fashion. That's setting up Corey for something, I'm pretty sure. Truth, and the other part is that even if he didn't have this deal, he was going to be leaving Jessica Jones after the Purple Man story anyways, that he was doing. And he has already found the replacement. And in his words, this is a direct quote, "She is amazing." He is not going to be updating us on any of the stuff from Marvel's plans here, since it is theirs to announce and not his. So, you hit on this last week, because I believe we did some predictions on who we would want to see take over. So, who do you think's taking over the Jessica Jones book?
I still feel like Becky Cloonan, it makes the most sense to me if it's someone that's already at Marvel. Not because the other female Marvel creators couldn't be capable. It's just that this, if I'm going off of what their work is right now, who would I see make that step and everyone go, well, yeah, that just makes sense. She is my pick.
She just finished, her run on Punisher.
Yeah. So
I mean,
she's totally, it would make a great deal of sense to see that happen. Also, when he says that the characters will continue on in fine Marvel fashion, that makes absolute sense because Marvel is an IP farm in the same regards as DC is, in the same regards as most comic book companies are these days. They create these characters. They don't want the characters to slip into obscurity, although they're doing, shit with Fantastic Four right now. But that's because the guy in charge of the company is on a fucking power trip with Fox. And they always have the option to kill the character and then bring them back in 6 months like they do with all their other IPs.
Unless they are Professor Xavier or the old Cyclops or the old Wolverine because it's been longer than 6 months, or the old Jean Grey because it's been longer than 6 months.
Although who are coming back right now, the old Wolverine and the old Jean Grey.
Yeah.
And it's not like there are 6 other Jean Greys and 100 billion other Wolverines and a couple dozen Cyclopses. And there's enough bald people around in the world. You could just have Moondragon sit in Charlie's chair and that'd be fine.
So honestly, I'm pretty excited for this. I mean, it's one of the things, like, I look at this and it's the comic book industry. I feel like it's not one of these things that it's like the 90s East Coast West Coast rap battle, like like Bendis just went from the East Coast, now he's joined the West Coast, and then pretty soon we're gonna find him shot in a limousine or whatever, like Tupac was.
No, he's got to be Biggie, right? I mean, it's Bendis.
Yeah.
He's got to be Biggie.
Yeah.
Tupac is definitely Mark Miller. It just makes sense.
What I was getting with that is they're more, they're all still friends and all this. There are a couple of writers who work in both camps and all that. So, I mean,
it's always been a friendly rivalry. I think in the late 90s when Jemis was in charge at Marvel, he maybe took the rivalry to a little bit of a further point, and because Jemis is such a prick, but or was playing one so well. it's hard to tell the difference sometimes. Says the guy who's an asshole on the internet every week. It's different now because it used to be that Marvel and DC were in the same city. And it's just that since DC's moved out to the coast, like it was fucking Die Hard, that it now kind of requires you to uproot yourself to go from one company to the other. Not as much if you're a writer, but when there was the bullpen aspect of it, it was like, oh, I'm going to go work at Marvel. Okay, well, that means you got to take a cab in a different direction in the morning than what you did before. And then a few years ago, when DC moved out to be closer to Hollywood for their properties, they seriously made people move across the country. If you want to be a part of this, you've got to uproot and come out here to still be a part of DC Comics. And that was a huge stinking deal. And I have to wonder if that's something that's a part of this.
Yeah. So we're going to switch gears here on this final story. Still sticking with comics, but focusing not on the writers, on the heads.
Speaking of making moves,
yeah, Marvel has named a new editor-in-chief, and his name is C.B. Cebulski. He is replacing Axel Alonso, who has served in that role since 2011 and is leaving Marvel. Oh, wow. He lives in Shanghai. I just saw that on the article. There's a quote here. He says, "It's crazy. It's an honor. I'm blown away by the opportunity," Mr. Cebulski said in a telephone interview from his home in Shanghai. He said he wants to foster talent at each step of creating a comic. We always hear about the writers and artists, but people forget the inkers and the colorists and the letterers. He said each of them is an artist in their own right. But yeah, so he joined in 2002 as an associate editor, and then in 2011 he became the vice president of international brand management for the company. And actually, one of his first roles, do you know what one of his first roles is? You probably read and looked at the article, so you already know.
Well, I knew actually. He was one of the people who brought the Runaways. I think he might have been maybe chief of the Tsunami line that Runaways was a part of. There was a couple of interesting books from Tsunami, including Sentinel, which is about a kid who found an old Sentinel robot, and it became kind of an Iron Giant type of book. There was a Human Torch book. There was a Emma Frost book, I think before they hooked her up with Cyclops. There was a couple other ones, and probably Namor. But Runaways was easily considered the breakout hit, much like Hitman was the only thing that came out of the crossover that I can't remember the name of it, but it was just so fucking bad. And but we got Hitman out of it. Yeah, and all props to Cebulski for getting this position. That's great. What is interesting is a week after finding out that Bendis is leaving Marvel, is that we find out Axel Alonso is leaving Marvel and leaving his position of editor-in-chief. That's huge. Yeah. And certainly the views of Marvel right now is that it's going through an extremely challenging time. And they've been trying to get back to something with Marvel Legacy, and I don't think it's stuck yet. But the last several years, a big complaint, not one that I necessarily agree with, is that it's been all of these characters are no longer themselves. So you don't have Steve as Captain America. You've had Sam, Falcon. You don't have Tony as Iron Man. You have Dr. Doom and Riri Williams. You don't have Thor as Thor. You have Jane Foster as Thor, and Thor is considered Odinson. And it's, some people have felt that it's gone too much in the gender and race swapping, and not understanding that stories can actually happen organically, and these things can be like, oh yeah, well, no, this is something we wanted to do with the story. But it was conspicuous that all of these things were happening at around the same time. And that they followed up the changing of Peter Parker to the Miles Morales character in the Ultimate Universe. And it's like, oh, Bendis just got rid of that world's Spider-Man, replaced him with a completely different character that is obviously a different race, and it's taken off really well for us. Well, then let's change all of these characters. But Marvel's done this before. It's just that when they did it in the 90s, it was still a bunch of other white guys for the most part. It was Rhodey as War Machine, but other than that, we had Thunderstrike in the place of Thor, white guy. We had U.S. Patriot or U.S. Agent as Captain America, white guy. DC had replaced Bruce Wayne and Clark Kent in their roles. They replaced Wonder Woman with Artemis. It was a big thing that happened at that point, but it was always in the plan of like, but we're going to get back to these main characters again. When Marvel brought back their Steve Rogers character as Cap, they said, oh, by the way, it also turns out that he's been a Nazi the entire time. And it was a story that was just done so well with the Clone Saga that they had to do it over again.
Which hey, I like that story, to be honest. I mean, the whole, because it made you think, like, are they retconning 75 years of history for this, or is it what it ended up being, that this is a separate entity, a separate creation, that just sort of took over from the Cap that we know and love. And it's leading, it's led honestly to, with a recommendation I will give right now of, if you look at the Captain America 695, the reboot done by Mark Waid and Chris Samney, it's a great book.
Yeah, but it's a great book and a great series that's starring Steve again. A lot of people feel like it's the Band-Aid on the festering wound that has been Marvel for the last several years. Because one of the problems is you put these new characters in these roles, and that's one thing, but then you're also taking the other characters that people like away at the same time, and it's not a legacy character, it's a replacement character. And on top of that, we're at a point where Marvel's films are hugely popular, and so we're going into the movie theaters and we're seeing Steve Rogers and Tony Stark and Bruce Banner and all of these characters up on the screen, and you go in a comic shop and those characters aren't anywhere. So I don't believe that anything that Marvel has done in this has been creatively bad, but I do agree that fans were pissed off and that they had to look at how to get those fans back. But I don't know that they've figured out how to do that yet, because even in these legacy numberings and stuff, Thor is supposed to be back, but then didn't really come back, or a bunch of other stuff. It's just so, I don't know that it's quite working. And a lot of people have been screaming for the head of Axel Alonso, saying he needs to be gone, that he has kind of led Marvel Comics down a bad road for the last 6 years. And when it was announced that he was gone, there was a huge wave of excitement. I don't like seeing somebody lose their job. If he chose to leave and he felt like, I've done everything I can at Marvel and I'd like to go see what other opportunities, great. I'm not looking to see anybody get fired, but it definitely feels like the timing was, legacy didn't work out on top of all these other things that didn't really work out, and we need to make some serious changes right now.
Yeah, you hit on everything there basically. I'm excited for this just because with the things that I've seen in the article, it does sound like CB is going to do is going to do really good. It sounds like he understands characters, and even putting the focus on everyone involved with the book, not just the writer and the artist. Because to be honest, I could only tell you one editor at the book who is not editor in chief. Actually, no, it's or a head editor, and that's, oh god, I'm blanking on her name now. Sana, she's the editor for Miss Marvel. Because she's been in the news and all that with the fact that we have Miss Marvel, who is a Muslim American woman or a teenage girl in the world we live in now and stuff like that. And so it's one of those things, like, you don't see that with the X-Men books or with the Spider-Man books or the Guardians of the Galaxy books, like, where it's like, oh yeah, this editor, oh, that's great, and all that. It's like, but with her, it's the Kamala Khan. But I was thinking of who the editor is. It's Sana something. I'm blanking on her last name.
I do want to say that, I don't know how much of a part he really played in it, but it was under Axel being the editor-in-chief that we got the Kamala Khan character. So that right there, to me, is a huge accomplishment and one of those things that you have in your belt and you go, yeah, well, I was in charge of Marvel when we got the new Miss Marvel, and that character is fantastic.
You want to know who else is fantastic? Brian Jensen. He is our newest Patreon partner. He went to gncast.com/support and clicked that link to our Patreon and donated money. He donates money to us now every month. He joins Growly Bear. He joins, I think there's a couple other people who join us. or who support us monthly. He jumped in, he supported us. Do it too. Be like him. Be like Growly. Because I'm pretty sure Growly only paid for 1 mention, and now I think this is the 6th straight mention we've given him.
Well, we mention Growly all the time anyways because he's part of the show. Let's face it, Growly is here more than I am. but absolutely, there's no limit to how much or how little you can support the show. And if you're a listener, you're a supporter of the Galactic Network. If you're someone who likes the Facebook page and just interacts with us on there, if you're a person who went and joined up and jumped into our Slack, you're a friend of the show. You're important to the show and important to the network. And if you want to support on the Patreon and can only do it 1 month, that has a lot of value to us. We appreciate any and all of that. So it's not it only matters to us if you do it at this level for this long and everything. No, that's not what it's about. We're happy to have any kind of support that you can lend us.
Yes. So the other part that we should probably mention is we dropped to keep the videos on YouTube. We dropped the ads on YouTube. Because YouTube's having a bunch of fun with their algorithms, and please don't shut us down. Please don't shut us down. As I say this, I'm like, wait a minute, we're on there now. But so here's our plea: help Dave lose less money for this, because he's basically paying out of pocket to keep the WordPress going, to keep the domain under our control, the email, all this stuff. He's paying out of his pocket. And yes, he does have the fancy radio job, but here we could still use help. gncast.com/support. The way you can help the show out in particular is by filling out our survey at bit.ly/EN survey 2017. That's capital E, capital N, capital S, and then Survey 2017. The numbers there. So those are the ways you can help us out, and I thank you.
For more on this Galactic Network podcast, go to gncast.com. That's gncast.com.